Your first ESG report will not fail because the data was wrong. It'll fail because nobody agreed what was in it. Which sites, which companies, which 12 months. That's the boundary, the line around what counts as yours. And if you fix it after you've collected, you collect it all again. I've watched a contractor lose 11 weeks to that exact mistake. So here's the sequence that stops it happening to you. 7 steps, and 3 decisions that come before step 1. 4 reasons first reports come back. 1. Data gathered before the boundary was fixed. Every figure has to be recollected. 2. Joint venture sites counted for fuel and dropped for waste. Same site, 2 different answers in one report. 3. Carbon offsets subtracted inside the Scope 1 total. Once you net offsets into the inventory, the number stops describing what you omitted. 4. The words "in accordance with GRI" printed with no content index behind them. That last one is not a formatting gap, it's an invalid claim. And one of these 5 is the single commonest rejection. We'll get to which one later on. So, what is an ESG report? It's a disclosure made against a named standard. Not a brochure, not a photo essay of your best site. A standard is a published set of numbered requirements you're answering, one by one. It covers one reporting period, and that period matches your financial year, because your auditors and your accountants have to be looking at the same 12 months. It covers one organizational boundary, matching how the business consolidates financially, and it states all of that up front. Standard, boundary, period, and any restated figures, because a report that doesn't say what it covers cannot be verified by anyone. One more thing. Under the European sustainability rules, this isn't even a separate PDF. It's a labeled section inside the management report, the sustainability statement. 4 words get used as if they mean the same thing. They don't. A standard is what you disclose against. GRI, the European ESRS, the international IFRS S1 and S2. Numbered requirements. A framework is how you structure your thinking. The TCFD's 4 pillars are a framework. And here's something that catches experienced people out. The TCFD was disbanded in 2023, and its monitoring moved to the ISSB. If you write TCFD aligned in a report today, what you actually mean is IFRS S2. Say IFRS S2. Regulation is what forces you to report. CSRD, your market's listing guidance, or a clause in your client's contract. And methodology is how you calculate, the GHG protocol. Most first reports name a framework, then disclose against nothing specific at all. E, S, and G. Environmental is the one you already know. Emissions, energy, water, waste, biodiversity, material use. Social is your workforce, health and safety, training, community, and labor rights down your supply chain. Governance is board oversight, ethics, anti-corruption, remuneration, and how someone raises a grievance. Now, first reports overweight E enormously, not from bias, from availability. Fuel logs and waste transfer notes already exist on your sites. Nobody has to build them. But a report that's 90% environmental is a carbon report wearing an ESG label. One structural note for the auditors listening. Under GRI, most of the G doesn't live in a topic standard at all. It sits in the universal standards. Disclosures 2.9 through 221 on governance, 223 through 227 on policy and compliance. Which rulebook actually binds you? Start with CSRD because it's the one everyone's anxious about, and the anxiety is mostly out of date. After the Omnibus reform, you're in scope only if you have more than 1,000 employees and more than 450 million euro of net turnover. Both, not either. And it applies to financial years starting on or after the 1st of January 2027, so the first reports land in 2028. Non-EU parent? Over €450 million of EU turnover, plus an EU subsidiary above 200 million. In Saudi, the CMA and Tadawul guidelines are voluntary, genuinely voluntary, except if you've issued green or sustainability-linked debt. Roughly 80% of the companies previously caught by CSRD fell straight out of scope under Omnibus. Check before you panic. So if the law doesn't force you, what does? 4 things, and I see all 4 on live projects. A contract clause requiring annual disclosure against a named standard. A tender pre-qualification questionnaire that scores your emissions and your safety data. A parent company or JV partner who is in CSRD scope asking you for value chain data. That means the emissions and information they need from you as their supplier. And a lender's sustainability-linked facility, with disclosure written into the covenants. Now, here's a right most practitioners don't know they have. If you're under 1,000 employees, the Omnibus Directive caps what a large customer can demand from you. A contract clause asking for more than the voluntary standard is not binding for CSRD purposes. You can say no. Politely, but you can say no. Boundary. The decision that governs every number after it. You pick one consolidation approach, one rule for deciding which entities count as yours. Equity share, financial control, or operational control. For contractors, it's almost always operational control. You report what you operate. Here's the difference made concrete. A 50-50 joint venture site that you manage. Under operational control, 100% of it comes in. Under equity share, 50%. Same site, 2 legitimate answers. What's not legitimate is picking one for fuel and the other for waste. Whatever you choose, it applies to every indicator. Fuel, waste, water, workforce, incidents. And a site that mobilized in August counts from August. You don't drop it for being a part-year site. You prorate it. Now, the operational boundary. Which emissions are yours? Scope 1 is fuel you combust yourself. Plant, gensets, company vehicles, welding gas. Scope 2 is energy you purchase and consume. Electricity, heat, steam, cooling. Scope 3 is everything else in your value chain, split across 15 defined categories. For a contractor, Category 1, purchased goods and services, usually dwarfs everything else. Concrete, steel, asphalt. Your Scope 1 might be a rounding error next to your concrete. And a classic misfile. Waste generated in operations is Scope 3 Category 5, not Scope 1. The emissions happen at the treatment facility, not on your site. Year 1, you screen all 15 categories, report the ones you can evidence, and disclose the ones you excluded and why. Let me give you the real one. Mid-size contractor, 6 active sites. A client asks for an ESG report. The team does what feels sensible. They start collecting fuel, waste, water. 11 weeks of chasing site teams. Then the boundary conversation finally happens. 2 joint venture sites are in. 1 leased yard is out. And every figure has to be collected again, against the right scope this time. Nothing was wrong with the data. The data was fine. The scope it was collected against had never been fixed. 12 to 16 weeks. That's what a first report actually takes. And I'd rather you heard the real number now. Materiality and boundary eat the first 4 weeks. That feels slow. It isn't. It's the gate. Everything downstream is wrong if this is wrong. Data collection is the long pole, 6 to 8 weeks, because you're pulling records from live sites where people have a job that isn't your report. Leave 3 weeks at the end for review, legal check, and sign-off. People always forget legal. And start after the financial year closes, so the period you're reporting is fixed and complete. 7 steps on screen.
Each one has a single named owner and a single output document. If a step has no output document, it hasn't happened. It's been discussed.
Step 1. Mobilise. Name one report owner, one person with the authority to ask any site for data and be answered. If that authority is unclear, week 6 is where you find out. Then one data owner per topic: fuel, waste, water, HR, safety, procurement, finance. Named individuals, not departments. Agree the sign-off chain before you draft. Owner, legal, then your highest governance body, which usually means the board. And that last step isn't optional politeness. GRI Disclosure 214 requires you to state whether the highest governance body reviewed and approved the reported information. If your chain doesn't include them, the disclosure fails. Last thing, book your site data windows now. A live site will not pause for your deadline. Step 2, Part 1. Stakeholder engagement. Materiality without stakeholder input isn't an assessment. It's an internal opinion with a chart on top. Your stakeholders on a construction project are specific: the client, your workforce, your subcontractors, the neighbors, the regulator, and your lender. 6 groups, all reachable. And you have to evidence it. Interview notes, survey results, minuted meetings, complaint logs. Here's the good news most teams miss. You're already sitting on it. Every dust complaint, every noise call from the residents behind the hoarding, that is stakeholder input. Already logged, already dated. Record who you engaged, how you engaged them, and what they raised. GRI 229 requires that record. The record itself is a disclosure. Step 2, Part 2. Materiality. Materiality just means which topics matter enough to report. GRI 3 sets out a 4-step process. Understand your context, identify your actual and potential impacts, assess how significant they are, then prioritize. Now, 2 kinds. Impact materiality asks what your sites do to people and the environment. Financial materiality asks what climate and resource risk does to your balance sheet. Look at the grid. The European ESRS wants both directions. That's what double materiality means. The international IFRS S1 and S2 want financial only. Choose your standard, and you've chosen your question. Your output is a documented list of material topics with the method written down. And for every one of them, GRI 3-3 wants a management of topic disclosure. Skip it, and your in accordance claim breaks. Everything so far happened before you touched a single number. That's not preamble. That's the half that decides whether the numbers survive. Now, the data. Step 3. The disclosure map. Every material topic maps to specific numbered disclosures, not to a theme, not to "will cover emissions," to 305-1. And this is where you need to be careful in 2026, because GRI is mid-transition. Emissions today are GRI 305-1 through 305-5. From the 1st of January 2027, GRI 102 replaces them. Energy is GRI 302 today. GRI 103 replaces it on the same date, and early adoption is allowed. Biodiversity has already moved. GRI 101 replaced GRI 304 back in January 2026. What survives of GRI 305? Only 305-6, ozone-depleting substances, and 305-7, nitrogen and sulfur oxides. Everything climate moves out. Water, waste, and materials are unchanged for now. Every disclosure gets an owner, a source system, and an evidence type. Now the S and the G, the half that first reports, quietly skip. GRI 403, occupational health and safety, your recordable rates and your hazard identification process. GRI 401 and 404, employment and training, turnover, induction hours, competency hours.
GRI 414, Supplier Social Assessment, how you screen subcontractors on something other than price. You already do this at pre-qualification. You've just never called it a disclosure. GRI 205, Anti-Corruption, which operations you assessed for risk and whether the training was actually delivered, not just scheduled. And GRI 2-27, Compliance with Laws, fines and non-monetary sanctions, environmental ones included. Note that number. GRI 2-27 replaced the old GRI 307 environmental compliance disclosure. If your index still points at 307, it's pointing at a standard that no longer exists.
Step 4. Collect the data with the evidence attached to it. Rule: every figure needs a source document that a stranger could reperform your calculation from. Not a number in an email, a document. Diesel: Bowser delivery notes and fuel logs, not the plant manager's estimate, however experienced he is. Waste: transfer notes with tonnage, waste code, and disposal route, split by stream. Electricity: utility invoices, meter by meter. And watch this one. Generator hours are scope 1, not scope 2. It's fuel you burned. Water: meter readings and tanker tickets, split by source and by use. Keep one working paper file per disclosure. The figure, the source document, the calculation, and the names of who prepared it and who checked it. That's what assurance looks at first. Not your report, your file.
Same discipline, social, and governance data. Hours worked from timesheets. That's the denominator underneath every safety rate you'll ever publish, the number you divide by. Publish a rate without it, and nobody can check your arithmetic. Recordable incidents from the safety register, classified the same way across every site. 2 sites classifying differently makes your group number meaningless. Induction records and toolbox talks give you training hours with no new data collection at all. You're already recording them. Subcontractor pre-qualification files evidence supply chain screening you've already performed. Complaint and grievance logs evidence community engagement and its outcomes. Almost none of this is new work. It's existing records pointed at a disclosure number.
Numbers are the easy part. Evidence is what survives the auditor. And in year 1, the file you build matters more than the figure you publish.
Step 5. Calculate, then cross-check. Scope 1 is activity data times an emission factor. Liters of diesel, cubic meters of gas, times a published conversion figure. Scope 2 you report twice. Location-based uses your grid's average factor. Market-based uses what you actually contracted for. Where contractual instruments exist, both are required. Reporting one is an omission, not a simplification. State your factor source and its version: IPCC, DEFRA, IEA, or a national grid factor. Factors change annually. An undated factor is unverifiable. Set a base year, the year every future comparison runs back to, and write a recalculation policy with a significance threshold so you know in advance when a structural change forces a restatement. Report in tons of CO2 equivalent and say which gases and which global warming potential set you used. And offsets? Never subtracted from scope 1 or 2, disclosed separately below the inventory. Scope 3 in year 1. Screen all 15 categories. Report what you can evidence. Disclose the rest as excluded, with a reason. An honest exclusion is a disclosure. A silent one is a gap. Category 1. Purchased goods and services. Concrete, steel, asphalt. For most contractors, this is the whole story. Category 5. Waste generated in operations. Tonnage by disposal route times a treatment factor. Categories 4 and 6. Upstream haulage and business travel, both already sitting in your invoices and your expense system. Now, spend-based factors, multiplying money spent by an average emissions figure. They're crude, and they're perfectly acceptable in year 1, provided you label them as spend-based so nobody mistakes them for measured data. One caution. The Scope 3 standard is being revised. Consultation is still to come. Do not build year 1 on a draft.
Step 6. Targets, baselines, and telling the truth in the narrative. Don't set a target in year 1 you can't trace back to a verified baseline. A target announced on top of shaky data is a liability with a press release attached. A real target has 4 parts: a base year, a target year, a boundary, and a stated unit. Miss any one and it isn't measurable. Know which type you've set. An intensity target is emissions per unit of output. It can improve while your absolute emissions rise if you're growing. An absolute target is the total. They move differently, and the difference is where accusations of greenwashing start. Explain movement caused by structure, sites opened, sites handed over, scope changed, and disclose what got worse. A report where every single line improved reads as unverified. Nobody has a year like that.
Step 6, second half. The Content Index. In accordance with GRI is a high bar, all 9 of the GRI 1 requirements, and one of them is publishing a content index. With reference to GRI is the honest first-year option. You name the disclosures you used, you claim nothing more. Nobody will think less of you. Claiming in accordance and failing it is far worse than claiming with reference and meeting it. The index lists every disclosure, where to find it, and any omission with a stated reason. GRI allows 4 reasons: not applicable, legal prohibitions, confidentiality constraints, and information unavailable or incomplete. Each one needs a written explanation. Not applicable on its own isn't an omission reason, it's a shrug. And restated prior figures get labeled, with the reason and the effect both stated. Step 7. Review. Before anyone outside sees it. Reperform a sample, at least one figure per material topic, traced from the report back to the source document, and done by someone who didn't prepare it. Self-checking finds nothing. Check every number in your narrative against the number in your data table. They drift. They always drift, because the narrative gets written before the data closes. Confirm boundary consistency one last time. Same sites, same period, every indicator. Have legal review your forward-looking statements and your target language. And understand the 2 assurance levels. Limited assurance tests whether the numbers are plausible. Reasonable assurance tests the controls underneath them. Limited is far less onerous. For CSRD, limited is where it stays. The Omnibus reform removed the planned move to reasonable assurance altogether. 5 ways a first report gets rejected. Here's the one I promised you. 1. Scope 2 by a single method where contractual instruments exist. Dual reporting is required, not preferred. 2. Offsets netted into the Scope 1 or 2 total instead of shown as a separate line. 3. Boundary drift. JV sites in for fuel, out for waste. 4. In accordance with GRI with no content index behind it. That's the one. That's the commonest, and it's invalid rather than incomplete. 5. Safety rates published without the hours worked that produce them. And a bonus misfile worth burning in. Generator electricity is Scope 1. It's fuel you combust at a source you control. Report it as Scope 2 and you've counted the same diesel twice.
Now, the part that carries actual legal risk, and it isn't the number, it's the claim you make about it. From the 27th of September 2026, European rules ban carbon-neutral claims that rest on offsetting when they're made to consumers. Read that carefully because the detail matters. It's business to consumer. Your ESG report isn't consumer marketing, right up until your marketing team lifts a line out of it and puts it on a hoarding or a website. Then it is. Generic labels, green, eco-friendly, sustainable, need substantiation. Adjectives aren't evidence. Forward-looking targets need an implementation plan and independent verification to stand up.
The rule is simple, and it protects you. Report what you measured and claim only what the measurement supports.
What a first report should not try to do. Don't report 20 topics badly. Report 8 material topics with complete, evidenced data. Depth beats breadth every time in year 1. Don't publish a Scope 3 number you can't reproduce from source documents. That figure will follow you for years as your comparative. Don't benchmark against a peer whose boundary and method you haven't read. Different boundary, different answer. The comparison is noise. Don't seek external assurance in year 1 unless a contract requires it. Build the audit trail first. Buy assurance when there's something to assure. And don't let design start before the data closes. The numbers will move, and relaying a designed report is a miserable week. Year 1 sets the baseline and the method. That's the whole job.
Let's put it back together. Before step 1, lock your boundary, your consolidation approach, and your reporting period in writing, signed. Step 1, mobilize. 1 report owner, 1 data owner per topic. Sign-off chain agreed, including the board. Step 2, engage and assess. Your GRI 2-29 stakeholder record, then the GRI 3 4-step materiality process. Step 3, the disclosure map. Numbered E, S, and G disclosures, each with a named owner and a stated evidence type.
Step 4. Data. Delivery notes, transfer notes, meter invoices, timesheets, the safety register. Step 5. Calculate. Dual method Scope 2, stated factors with versions, Scope 3 screened and exclusions disclosed. Step 6. Narrative and index. With reference to is honest. In accordance needs all 9 requirements. Step 7. Review. Reperform a sample. Check narrative against tables. Get legal across your targets. Dates to hold on to. GRI 102 and 103 apply from January 2027, and the revised ESRS applies from financial year 2027, with early adoption allowed. And this week, write your boundary statement. 1 page, get it signed. Everything else in this video depends on that page existing.
The starter pack is linked below. The boundary statement template, the disclosure map, and the data collection log, ready to use. Next in this playlist, we move from reporting the numbers to reducing them, carbon reduction strategies, and the sustainability KPI dashboards that track them. Build it once, build it right. EnviroVerge. Environmental knowledge, field ready.